What's up, everybody? This is CTT, Chasing the Truth. And as you can see, the angle that I'm at, it's at a lower angle because I'm in the process of moving and getting everything moved out, moving into a new place. I know I've told you guys that I will not be biased on this channel or try not to be biased to the Browns since they are my favorite team. But I guess this video is going to be dedicated to that because everybody is showing disrespect to the players that we have on the team and don't know what they're talking about when they argue. Like, I'm sorry, but people need to realize stuff before they actually say it. Now, the top 100 players of 2019 came out, or the top 100 players in general came out, and I would have to disagree with a lot of what the players are saying. They put Lamar Jackson number one over the Super Bowl MVP, the Super Bowl winning quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and a guy who his just third year in the league has won a Super Bowl, and his second year, mind you, when after a season where he didn't even play, and he threw 50 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards, was ranked fourth on the list. Okay, only Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, and Aaron Donald were all ranked ahead of him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think if a guy wins a Super Bowl and wins Super Bowl MVP and carries his team through the playoffs, especially getting the comeback wins that he did, I think a guy like that deserves to be the number one quarterback. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's flashy. He can run the ball. He can do this. He can do that. The guy can't win a playoff game, for crying out loud. Everybody just needs to realize that. Okay? Everybody needs to wake up and realize that he can't throw the ball to save his life. And if he could actually drop back and throw some passes in the playoffs and set his feet instead of running all the damn time, he would actually be or have a playoff win by now, and he probably would have had a Super Bowl his first year or even last year. But instead, he wants to panic, and then when pressure comes at him and the hole that he has is blocked, he doesn't want to set his feet and throw. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, when Lamar Jackson was playing against the Chargers his first year and against the Tennessee Titans this year, you obviously didn't watch what was going on. Now, what they did is they had two edge rushers come off the end to block Lamar from coming that way. Now, normally what he would do is he would go up the middle, and you'd have most of these teams are playing a 4-3 set, so you'd have the three linebackers come up and try to stop him. Now, if that was the case, he would throw a little dump pass down to his tight end who is doing a slant route, and then they'd get about a 10-15 yard pass and go up the field. But that's not the case in what Tennessee did. They mixed it up. They did several different things, and what one of those things was that was working for them well is they played a 4-3 set. And what that happened was they had the two edge guys come off the ends, and when he was getting rushed, he would go up the middle like he normally does. And when he would throw that little dump pass, he'd have two linebackers come in at him, and then have one back in coverage, and then also have the safeties and corners back in coverage. So that way, that linebacker that is in coverage covers that tight end, and he has nowhere to throw. So what happens? He panics. He doesn't set his feet right, and he tries to make a throw that he can't make, and it gets intercepted, or it gets batted down. Things like that. Things like a veteran quarterback that can throw the ball, like Wilson, Rodgers, Watson, Allen, Breeze, Brady, anybody like that would know to set your feet and throw the damn ball. Okay? I understand. Yes, he was MVP. Yes, he had 36 touchdown passes. Some of those were short little passes, and some of those were deep ball passes. Some of those weren't even accurate. And yes, he had a lot of touchdowns, but also 7 of those were rushing touchdowns that he had 36 touchdowns total. Not passing, total. And I know that he had a lot of passing touchdowns, but like I said, a lot of those were short intermediate passes. Okay? Know your facts before you start arguing things. Yes, he is a good quarterback, but I technically wouldn't consider him a quarterback. I would consider him a running back that can throw the ball where he needs to. And until he can get better at throwing, he doesn't deserve the number one spot. Now, another thing is Derrick Henry is not deserving of the number 9 spot. I am sorry. He is not a top 10 running back. Or if he is, then it's just because, the popularity thing. Top 10 running backs need to be consistent. Derrick Henry has not been this consistent his whole career. And I do not understand what the hell people are thinking when they put Saquon Barkley in a top 5 running back, or even in the top 2 or top 3. They have it between Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. I'm sorry, Saquon Barkley's only had 2 years in the league, and his stats were mildly impressive. And the thing that pissed me off, or that upset me, that people don't realize, is how good Nick Chubb for the Cleveland Browns really is. Okay? Nick Chubb for the Cleveland Browns, people. Yes, Saquon Barkley won Offensive Player of the Year that year. Should have went to Baker Mayfield, because honestly, his stats the second half of the season were better than what Barkley's was. Barkley had a subpar offensive line. Nick Chubb had a terrible offensive line last year. His rookie year, I understand, he had a pretty decent O-line, because the Browns gave up 5 sacks in the last 8 games in the 2018 season. AKA why Baker had a better season than what he did in 2019. And for those of you that want to dog on the Browns and dog on how bad they are, and not look at different things that factor into this, mind you, and say Baker Mayfield is a mediocre quarterback at best, look at the factors that play into this. He had a terrible head coach, probably the worst in NFL history, the first half of the season. Okay? And then in the second half of the season, they fire him, they promote Greg Williams to head coach, and they put Freddie Kitchens as offensive coordinator. Now, Freddie didn't have to focus on being the head coach. He just had to focus on the offensive coordinating duties. When he took over, Baker's stats transitioned well. He ended up throwing 21 touchdowns to 7 interceptions the last 8 games of the season. And that's how he broke the rookie touchdown record that was previously set by Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning, mind you. And he possibly could have had 30 touchdowns, but he also didn't start for 3 games. And the third game that the Browns played against the Jets, he came in halfway through. And yes, we also switched up the offensive line. We got rid of our rookie left tackle that was giving up all the sacks for the previous 8 games. We put in Craig Robinson. And mind you, we had Joel Bitonio, left guard, J.C. Tretter, center, and Kevin Zeitler, right guard. 3 veteran guys, and Kevin Zeitler was one of the best guards in the last half of the season and one of the best guards overall. And then what happened is they gave up 5 sacks the last 8 games of the season. Baker wasn't under pressure. He had all the time in the world that he could do his play action reads. He can throw the passes down the field. He could sit in the pocket and do what he wanted to do. And that's why he can make the throws that he wanted to make. Last year, everybody wants to blame Baker for the crappy season he had. Okay, the offensive line was atrocious. Our offensive line this past year in 2019 was ranked in the top, or in the last 25. So we were ranked 25 or lower, mind you. The New York Giants was ranked higher than ours. And not to mention, our offensive line gave up 40 sacks or higher this past season. Baker was under more duress this past season than he was in 2018. And if you also look, he threw 21 interceptions to 22 touchdowns. Yes, I guarantee you 10 of those interceptions that he threw was all on his receivers. Because if you'd go back and watch the games, you would see that he had 10 throws that were intercepted that bounced off his receiver's hands and then deflected into the other guy's hands. And as a receiver, you are supposed to catch it. Now, what pisses me off the most is how they had Saquon Barkley ahead of Nick Chubb in that countdown for the top 100 players. They had Nick Chubb at 36, okay? 36 in the NFL with a guy that finished second in the league in rushing. How do you have a guy that finished second in the league in rushing, had 1,494 yards, finishing second in the league. And he did that with 298 carries. His longest touchdown run was 88 yards, and that was against the Baltimore Ravens. He had 8 touchdowns. He had 62 first downs. In 2018, he had 47 first downs. He also started in 16 games this past season. And guess what? In 2018, he started 9 games. Now, those were some of the stats that were from Nick Chubb. And a lot of you guys are considering Saquon Barkley a better running back. Okay, let's look at Saquon Barkley's stats, shall we? Okay, in 2018, Barkley started 16 games, had 1,307 yards. His longest touchdown was 78 yards, okay? Nick Chubb's was 92 against the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, he had 11 rushing touchdowns. Chubb had 8. I get that. But in 2019, Barkley only had 6. You can all say that he got injured the last 3 games of the season. But, I mean, Chubb really didn't have games where he got very many carries or anything. He could have easily been at 1,600 yards plus. But you also look at the receiving yards. The receiving yards, Barkley had 721 in 2018. And then this past year, he had 438. That's a lot more than what Chubb had. But he was also targeted 121 times and in 2018. And then in 2017, he was targeted 73 times. Now, Nick, on the other hand, was only targeted 29 times for 149 yards. And then in 2018, and then in 2019, he was targeted 49 times for 278 yards. That's a significant drop-off from what Saquon had. Okay? Now, Chubb had, like I said, 1,494 yards on 298 carries. Yes, that is more carries than what Saquon had. Saquon only had 1,003 yards on 217 carries. Okay, Chubb had a good probably 70 more carries than what Saquon had. I get that. But Chubb also played 3 more games than what Saquon did. And I guarantee you in those 3 games, Saquon probably would not have gotten 300 more yards. Or 500 more yards. Because he barely cracked 1,000 this year. Now, what people also don't realize is Chubb had 996 yards rushing in 2018. He only started 9 games. 9, mind you. Okay? Barkley had 1,307 yards in 16 games. Now, how is a guy that had 996 yards, who started 9 games, ranked lower than Saquon Barkley? And also, people forget that, yes, it was against the Oakland Raiders, but you don't see a running back do this very often with a terrible offensive line. And yes, the offensive line for the Browns was atrocious at this time because the Raiders was the 4th game that we played that season, and that was Baker's first start. And what did Nick Chubb do? He had 3 carries. 3 for over 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. 3 carries for 125 against the Oakland Raiders. Yes, their defense, I can understand their defense was terrible, but the Browns' offensive line was atrocious. And that was the first sign that they had that got rid of him. Now, had Nick Chubb started all 16 games, he probably could have hit 1,500 yards, or maybe even 1,600. He would have been the league's leading rusher in his first season. But people don't realize this, and they don't look at their stats and don't look at videos before they say their arguments, and it pisses me off. And what players don't realize is they don't realize these moments that these guys have. Everybody out there, all these lists that I see of the top NFL running backs, they want to put Saquon Barkley on there in the top 5. He is not a top 5 running back, at least not yet. But everybody wants to put Nick Chubb in the top 10, but not in the top 5. He's got better stats and better games and better footwork and everything than what Saquon Barkley does. And the proof is in the pudding. If you don't believe me, look at their stats. year by year. I get it. Saquon was injured for 3 games last year, but the Browns had a worse offensive line than what the Giants did. And not only that, look back at 2018. 1,307 yards compared to 996, and that was in 9 games that Nick Chubb started. 9. Okay? Now, the only other thing I'm going to say about this is Myles Garrett, a pass rusher who's entered the league, started in 11 games. His first season had 7 sacks, missed 5 games, mind you, and then started all 16, had 13.5 sacks in 2018, and then last year missed 6 games from a suspension that he shouldn't even have gotten suspended for, or if he did, it should have been a lot less. Had only had 10 sacks, and we had to play a lot of teams that he could have gotten double-digit sacks against, or even more, because we played the Arizona Cardinals, we played the Miami Dolphins, we played the Cincinnati Bengals again, the Baltimore Ravens again, the Pittsburgh Steelers again. He could have easily had 10 sacks. He could have had 20 sacks last year, but he got suspended before you got a chance to see that. How is an elite pass rusher, who is probably better than half these pass rushers on there, voted 80th out in the top 100? 80th. Yes, he got suspended, but his stats and his gameplay speak for itself. He should be at least in the top 40 or the top 35. And for those of you that say you know football, and for those of you that say that you watch it or that you look at it, I'm not going to be biased to my team, but I'm going to wake up and realize when a player is better than another player, or realize when, things are how they should be. And for those of you that want to come at me, go for it. Comment below on what you think. But I think that everybody's overhyping Saquon Barkley and underhyping Nick Chubb. Okay, the way that I see the top running backs in the league, top 5, mine, personally, I have CMC, Christian McCaffrey, number 1. Number 2, I have probably Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook. And then if 3, they probably flip-flop. And then number 4, I would have, if I had to think about it, probably Alvin Kamara, maybe Todd Gurley if he was healthy, and playing the way that he was. And then I'd have Nick Chubb in the top 5 because his stats speak for himself. Derrick Henry just barely missed the top 5. Or if he is in there, I'd probably take Kamara out and put him at 4 and then put Chubb at 5. And then it'd be Kamara and then Barkley. Okay, yes, I understand it. If Barkley can do what he is doing, but, better, then I'll put him in the top 5. But he's not a top 5 right now, and everybody's overlooking that, and it's like everybody needs a wake-up call. But that's all I have. Thank you for listening to this. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the video. And yes, I wasn't going to be biased, but this needed to be said because everybody was overlooking how good these players really are and how they are being disrespected and misranked on this list. It's voted on by the players, but these players are absolutely dumb at this point. So that's all I got. See y'all later. God bless you and have a good night.